I'm going to continue on reading from Ralph Waldo Emerson's book called Manners. Ralph Waldo Emerson lived in the 1800s. He wrote numerous books on spirituality, self-empowerment, many law of attractionists, many self-help books have taken their ideas from Ralph Waldo Emerson's ideas, books, insights. Please share your comments in the comment section down below. I want to thank you for joining me, taking the time out of your busy day to join me whilst I read this book for you. Please let me know what you think of my reading style. I look forward to hearing your insights, your ideas. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It helps this channel go further so more people can enjoy the gifts I want to give to the world. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to hearing your comments. I shall carry on. From quite near the top, you'll see the word Poland. Some friend of Poland, some Philian, some fanatic who plant shade trees for the second and third generation, and orchards when he is grown old. Some well concealed piety, some just man, happy in an ill fame, some youth ashamed of the favours of fortune, and impatiently casting them on other shoulders. And these are the centres of society on which it returns for fresh impulses. These are the creations of fashion, which is an attempt to organize beauty of behavior. The beautiful and the generous are, in the theory, the doctors and apostles of the church, Scipio and the Cid, and Sir Philip Sidney, and Washington, and every pure and valiant heart who worshipped beauty by word and by deed. The persons who constitute the national aristocracy are not found in the actual aristocracy, or only on its edge, as the chemical energy of the spectrum is found to be greatest just outside of the spectrum. Yet that is the infirmity of the sensuals, who do not know their sovereign when he appears. The theory of society supposes the existence and sovereignty of these. It divines afar off their coming. It says with the elder gods, quote, as heaven and earth are fair afar, then chaos and blank darkness, though one chiefs. And as we show beyond that heaven and earth, in form and shape compact and beautiful. Some on our heels a fresh perfection treads, a power more strong in beauty, born of us, and fated to excel us as we pass. In glory, that old darkness, for it is external law, that first in beauty shall be first in might. End quote. Therefore, within the ethnical circle of good society, there is a narrower and higher circle, concentration of its light, and flower of courtesy, to which there is always a tacit appeal of pride and reverence. As to its inner and imperial court, the parliament of love and chivalry, and this is constituted of those persons in whom heroic dispositions are native, with the love of beauty and the delight in society, and the power to embellish the passing day. If the individuals who compose the purer circles of aristocracy in Europe, the guarded blood of centuries should pass in review, in such manner as that we could at leisure and critically inspect their behavior, we might find no gentleman and no lady for although excellent specimens of courtesy and high breeding would gratify us in the assemblage, in the particulars we should detect offence, because elegance comes of no breeding, but of birth. There must be no romance. There must be romance of character, or the most fastidious exclusion of impertinences will not avail. It must be genius which takes that direction. It must be not courteous, but courtesy. High behavior is as rare in fiction as it is in fact. Scott is praised for the fidelity with which he painted the demeanor and conversation of the superior classes. Certainly, kings and queens, nobles and great ladies had some right to complain of the absurdity that had been put in their mouths before the days of Overley. But neither does Scott's dialogue bear criticism. His lords brave each other in smart epigrammic speeches, but the dialogue is in costume and does not please on the second reading. It is not warm with life. In Shakespeare alone, the speakers do not short and brittle. The dialogue is easily great, and he adds so many titles that of being the best bred man in England and in Christendom. Once or twice in a lifetime, we are permitted to enjoy the charm of noble manners in the presence of a man or woman who have no bar in their nature, but whose character emanates freely in their words and gesture. A beautiful form is better than a beautiful face. A beautiful behavior is better than a beautiful form. It gives a higher pleasure than statues or pictures. It is the finest of fine arts. A man is but a little thing in the midst of the objects of nature. Yet by the more quality of radiating from his countenance, he may abolish all considerations of magnitude, and in his manners equal the majesty of the world. I have seen an individual whose manners, though wholly within the conventions of elegant society, were never learned there, but were original and commanding, and held out protection and prosperity. One who did not need the aid of a court suit, but carried the holiday in his eye, who exhilarated the fancy by flinging wide the doors of new modes of existence, who shook off the captivity of etiquette with happy, spirit bearing, good natured, and free as Robin Hood, yet with the port of an emperor, if need be, calm, serious, and fit to stand the gaze of millions. The open air and the fields, the street and public chambers, are the places where man executes his will. Let him yield or divide the scepter at the doors of the house. Woman, with her instinct of behavior, instantly detects in a man a love of trifles, any coldness or imbecility, or, in short, any want of that large, flowing, and magnanimous department which is indispensable as an exterior in the whole. Our American institutions have been friendly to her, and at this moment I esteem it a chief felicity of this country that it excels in women. A certain awkward consciousness of inferiority in the men may give rise to the new chivalry in behalf of women's rights. Certainly let her be as much better placed in the laws and in social forms as the most zealous reformer can ask. But I confide so entirely in her inspiring and musical nature that I believe only herself can show us how she shall be served. The wonderful generosity of her sentiments raises her at times into heroic and godlike regions, and verifies the pictures of Minerva, Juno, or Panlia, and by the firmness with which she treads her upward path, She convinces the coarsest calculators that another road exists than that which their feet know. But besides those who make good in our imagination, the place of Muses and of Delphic Sibyls, are there not women who fill out vase with wine and roses to the brim, so that the wine runs over and fills the house with perfume, who inspires us with courtesy, who unloose our tongues and we speak, who anoint our eyes and we see. We say things we never thought to have said. For once, our walls of habitual reserve vanished and left us at large. We were children playing with children in a wide field of flowers. Steep us, we cried, and these influences for days, for weeks, and we shall be sunny poets, and will write out in many colored words the romance that you are. Was it Hafiz or Firdausi that said of his Persian Leela, she was an elemental force and astonished me by her amount of life? When I saw her day after day radiating every instant redundant joy and grace on all around her, she was a solvent powerful to reconcile all heterogeneous persons into one society, like air or water, an element of such great range of affinities that it combines readily with 1,000 substances. Where she is present, all others will be more than they are wont. She was a unit and a whole, so that whatsoever she did became her. She had too much sympathy and desire to please, than that you could say her manners were marked with dignity. Yet no princess could surpass her clear and erect demeanor on each occasion. She did not study the Persian grammar, nor the books of the seven poets, but all the poems of the seven seemed to be written upon her. For though the bias of her nature was not to thought, but to sympathy, yet was she so perfect in her own nature as to meet intellectual persons by the fullness of her heart, warming them by her sentiments, believing, as she did, that by dealing nobly with all would show themselves noble. I know that this Byzantine pile of chivalry or fashion, which seems so far and picturesque to those who look at the contemporary facts for science, for entertainment, is not equally pleasant to all spectators. The constitution of our society makes it a giant castle to the ambitious youth who have not found their names enrolled in his golden book, and whom it has excluded from its coveted honors and privileges. They have yet to learn that its seeming grandeur is shadowy and relative. It is great by their allowance. Its proudest gates will fly open at the approach of their courage and virtue. For the present distress, however, of those who are predisposed to suffer from the tyrannies of this caprice, there are easy remedies. To move your residence a couple of miles, or at most 4, will commonly relieve the most extreme susceptibility. For the advantages which fashion values are plants which thrive in very confined localities. In a few streets, namely, out of this precinct they go for nothing, are of no use in the farm, in the forest, in the market, in war, in the nuptial society, in the library or scientific circle, at sea in friendship, in the heaven of thought or virtue. We have lingered long enough in these painted courts. The worth of the thing signified most vindicate our taste for the emblem. Everything that is called fashion and courtesy humbles itself before the cause and fountain of honor, creator of titles and dignities, namely the heart of love. This is the royal blood. This is the fire, which in all countries and contingencies will work after its kind and conquer and expand all that approaches it. This gives new meanings to every fact. This impoverishes the rich, suffering the grandeur but its own. What is rich? Are you rich enough to help anybody? To succor the unfashionable and the eccentric? Rich enough to make the Canadian in his wagon, the itinerant with the consul's paper, which commands him, quote, to the charitable, end quote. The swarthy Italian with his few broken words of English, the lame pauper hunted by overseas from town to town, even the poor insane or besotted wreck of man or woman, feel the noble exception of your presence and your house from the general bleakness and stoniness. To make such feel that they were greeted with a voice with which made them both remember and hope. What is vulgar but to refuse the claim on acute and conclusive reasons? What is gentle but to allow it and give their heart and yours one holiday from the national caution? Without the rich heart, wealth is an ugly beggar. The king of Shiraz could not afford to be so bountiful as the poor Osman who dwelt at his gate. Osman had a humanity so broad and deep that although his speech was so bold and free with the Quran as to discuss all derivacies, yet there was never a poor outcast, eccentric or insane man, some fool who had cut off his beard, or who had been mutilated under a vow, or had a pet madness in his brain, but fled at once to him. That great heart lay there, so sunny and hospitable in the center of the country, that it seemed as if the instinct of all sufferers drew them to his side, and the madness which he harbored he did not share. Is not this to be rich? This only to be rightly rich. Is not this to be rich? This only to be rightly rich? But I shall hear without pain that I play the courtesy very ill, and talk of that which I do not well understand. It is easy to see that what is called by distinction society and fashion has good laws as well as bad, has much that is necessary and much that is absurd, too good for banning and too bad for blessing. It reminds us of a tradition, of the pagan mythology, and any attempt to settle its character. I overheard Love one day, said Sevenus, talking of destroying the earth. He said it had failed. They were all rogues and vixens, who went from bad to worse. As fast as the days succeeded each other, Minerva said she hoped not. They were only ridiculous little creatures, with this odd circumstance, that they had a blur or indeterminate aspect, seen far or seen near. If you call them bad, they would appear so. If you call them good, they would appear so. and there was no one person or action among them which would not puzzle but much more Olympus to know whether it was fundamentally bad or good. So now we have finished that book on manners. That was on page 401, although on the PDF it's back in the 90s, 393, I believe it is. In any case, we're going to continue on with the next book called Gifts. And it is on 402 in the real book. We're going to go by the real book. Gifts. Gifts of one who loved me. It was high time they came. When he ceased to love me, time they stopped for shame. It is said that the world is in a state of bankruptcy, that the world owes the world more than the world can pay, and ought to go into chancery and be sold. I do not think this general insolvency, which involves in some sort all the population, to be the reason for the difficulty experienced at Christmas and New Year, and other times is bestowing gifts, since it is always so pleasant to be generous, though very vexatious to pay debts. But the impediment lies in the choosing. If any time it comes into my head that a present is due from me to somebody, I am puzzled what to give until the opportunity is gone. Flowers and fruit are always fit presents. Flowers because they are proud assertion that a ray of beauty outvalues all the utilities of the world. These gay natures contrast with the somewhat stern countenance of ordinary nature. They are like music heard out of a workhouse. Nature does not cocker us. We are children, not pets. She is not found. Everything is dealt to us without fear or favor. At the several universal laws, yet these delicate flowers look like the frolic and interference of love and beauty. Men used to tell us that we love flattery, even though we are not deceived by it, because it shows that we are of importance enough to be courted. Something like that pleasure the flowers give us. What am I to whom these sweet hints are addressed? Fruits are acceptable gifts because they are the flower of commodities and admit of fantastic values being attached to them. If a man should send to me to come 100 miles to visit him, and should set before me a basket of fine summer fruit, I should think there was some proportion between the labor and the reward. For common gifts, necessity makes pettiness and beauty every day. And one is glad when an imperative leaves him no option, since if the man at the door have no shoes, you have not to consider whether you could procure him a paint box. And as it is always pleasing to see a man eat bread or drink water in the house or out of doors, so it is always a great satisfaction to supply these first wants. Necessity does everything well. In our condition of universal dependence, it seems heroic to let the petitioner be the judge of his necessity, and to give all that is asked, though at great inconvenience. If it be a fantastic desire, it is better to leave to others the office of punishing him. I can think of many parts I should prefer playing to that of the Furies. Next to things of necessity, the rule for a gift. which one of my friends prescribed, is that we might convey to some person that which properly belonged to his character and was easily associated with him in thought. But our tokens and compliment and love are for the most part barbarous. Rings and other jewels are not gifts, but apologies for gifts. The only gift is a portion of thyself. Thou must bleed for me. Therefore the poet brings his poem, the shepherd his lamb, the farmer corn, the miner a gem, the sailor coral and shells, the painter his picture, the girl a handkerchief of her own sewing. This is right and pleasing, for it restores society insofar to the primary basis. When a man's biography is conveyed in his gift, and every man's wealth is an index of his merit, but it is a cold, lifeless business when you go to the shops to buy me something which does not represent your life and talent, but a goldsmith's. This is fit for kings and rich men who represent kings, and a full state of property to make presents of gold and silver stuffs as a kind of symbolical sin offering or payment of blackmail. The law of benefits is a difficult channel which requires careful sailing or crude boats. It is not the office of a man to receive gifts. How do you give them? We wish to be self-sustained. We do not quite forgive a giver. The hand that feeds us is in some danger of being bitten. We can receive anything from love, for that is a way of receiving from ourselves, but not from anyone who assumes to bestow. We sometimes hate the meat which we eat, because there seems something of degrading dependence and living by it. Quote, brother, if Jove to thee a present make, take heed that from his hands thou nothing take. End quote. We ask the whole, nothing less will content us. We arrange society. If it do not give us, besides earth and fire and water, opportunity, love, reverence, and objects of veneration, he is a good man who can receive a gift well. We are either glad or sorry at a gift. Both emotions are unbecoming. Some violence, I think, is done, some degradation born, when I rejoice or grieve at a gift. I'm sorry when my independence is invaded, or when a gift comes from such as do not know my spirit. And so the act is not supported, and if the gift pleases me overmuch, then I should be ashamed that the donor should read my heart and see that I love his commodity and not him. Gift to be true must be the flowing of the giver unto me, correspondent to my flowing unto him. When the waters are at level, then my good pass to him, and his to me. All his are mine, or mine his. I say to him, how can you give me this pot of oil or this flagon of wine when all your oil and wine is mine? Which belief of mine this gift seems to deny. Hence the fitness of beauty, not useful things for gifts. This giving is flat usurpation, and therefore when the beneficiary is ungrateful, as all beneficiaries hate all tenants, not at all considering the value of the gift, but looking back to the greatest store it was taken from, I rather sympathize with the beneficiary than with the anger of my Lord Timon, for the expectation of gratitude is mean, and is continually punished by the total insensibility of the obliged person. It is a great happiness to get off without injury and heart burning from one who has the ill luck to be served by you. It is a very wondrous business, this of being served, and the debtor naturally wishes to give you a slap. A golden text for these gentlemen is that which I so admire in the Buddhists. Who never thanks and who says, quote, "Do not flatter your benefactors," end quote. The reason of these discords I conceive to be that there is no commensurability between a man and any gift. You cannot give anything to a magnanimous person. After you have served him, he at once puts you in debt of his magnanimity. The service a man renders his friend is trivial and selfish, compared with the service he knows his friend stood in readiness to yield him. Alike before he had begun to serve his friend, and now also. Compare with that good will I bear my friend. The benefit is in my power. To render him seems small. Besides, our action on each other, good as well as evil, is so incidental and at random that we can seldom hear the acknowledgments of any persons who would thank us for a benefit. Without some shame and humiliation, we can really strike a direct stroke, but must be content with an oblique one. We seldom have the satisfaction of yielding a direct benefit which is directly received. But rectitude scatters favors on every side without knowing it, and receives with wonder the thanks of all people. I fear to breathe any treason against the majesty of love, which is the genius and God of gifts, and to whom we must not affect to prescribe. Let him give kingdoms of flower leaves indifferently. Let him give kingdoms of flower leaves indifferently. There are persons from whom we always expect fiery tokens. Let us not cease to expect them. This is prerogative, and not to be limited by our municipal rules. For the rest, I like to see that we cannot be bought and sold. The best of hospitality and of generosity is also not in the will but in fate. I find I am not much to you. You do not need me. You do not feel me. Then I am thrust out of doors, though you proffer me house and lands. No services are of any value, but only likeness. When I have attempted to join myself to others by services, it proved an intellectual trick. No more. They eat your service like apples and leave you out. Love them, and they feel you, and delight in you all the time. Nature. Guess we're back at nature again. That was the very first book we read about nature. I guess there's another book on nature. It's a different style. Let's see. The rounded world is fair to see, 9 times folded in mystery. Though baffled seers cannot impart the secret of its laboring heart, throb thine with nature's throbbing breast. and all is clear from east to west. Spirit that lurks each form within beckons to spirit of its kin. Self-kindled, every atom glows and hints the future which it owes. There are days which occur in this climate at almost any season of the year wherein the world reaches its perfection. When the air, the heavenly bodies, and the earth make a harmony as if nature would indulge her offspring. When in these bleak upper sides of the planet nothing is to desire, that we have heard of the happiest latitudes, and we bask in the shining hours of Florida and Cuba. When everything that has life gives sign of satisfaction, and the cattle that lie on the ground seem to have great and tranquil thoughts. These halcyons may be looked for which a little more assurance in that pure October weather which we distinguish by the name of the Indian summer. The day immeasurably long sleeps over the broad hills and warm wide fields. To have lived through all its sunny hours seemed longevity enough. The solitary places do not seem quite lonely. At the gates of the forest, the surprised man of the world is forced to leave his city estimates of great and small, wise and foolish. The knapsack of custom falls off his back with the first step he takes into these precincts. Here is a sanctity which shames our religious and reality, which discredits our heroes. Here we find nature to be the circumstances which dwarfs every other circumstance, and judges like all good men that come to her. We have crept out of our close and crowded houses into the night and morning, and we see what majestic beauties daily wrap us in their bosom. How willingly we would escape the barriers which render them comparatively impotent, escape their sophistication and second thought, and suffer nature to entrance us. The tempered light of the woods is like a perpetual morning, and is stimulating and heroic. The anciently reported spells of these places creep on us. The stems of pines, hemlocks, and oaks almost gleam like iron on the excited eye. The incommunicable trees begin to persuade us to live with them and quit our life of solemn tribes. Here no history or church or state is interpolated on the divine sky and the immortal year. How easily we might walk onward into the opening landscape, absorbed by new pictures and by thoughts fast succeeding each other, until by degrees the recollection of home was crowded out of the mind, all memory obliterated by the tyranny of the present, and we were led in triumph by nature. These enchantments are medicinal. They sober and heal us. These are plain pleasures, kindly and native to us. Come to our own and make friends with matter, with ambitious chatter of the schools, and persuade us to despise. We never can part with it. The mind loves its old home. As water to our thirst, so is the rock, the ground to our eyes and hands and feet. It is firm water. It is cold flame. What health, what affinity. Even an old friend, ever like a dear friend and brother, when we chat affectedly with strangers, comes in his honest face, and takes a grave liberty with us, and shames us out of our nonsense. Cities give not the human senses room enough. We go out daily and nightly to feed the eyes on the horizon, and require so much scope, just as we need water for our bath. There are all degrees of nature influence, from these quarantine powers of nature up to her dearest and gravest ministrations to the imagination and the soul. There is the bucket of cold water from the spring, the wood fire to which the chill traveler rushes for safety, and there is the sublime moral of autumn and of noon. We nestle in nature and draw our living as parasites from her roots and grains, and we receive glances from the heavenly bodies which call us to solitude and foretell the remotest future. I think, sorry, the blue zenith, the point in which romance and reality meet. I think if we should not, I think if we should be wrapped away into all that and dream of heaven, and should converse with Gabriel and Uriel, the upper sky would be all that would remain of our furniture. It seems as if the day was not wholly profane, in which we have given heed to some natural object, full of snowflakes and a still air, preserving to each crystal its perfect form. The blowing of sleet over a wide sheet of water and over plains, the waving rye field, the mimic waving acres of Houstonia, whose innumerable florets within whiten and ripple before the eye. The reflections of trees, flowers, and glassy lakes. The musical, steaming, odorous south wind, which converts all trees to wind humps. The crackling and spurting of hemlock in flames, or of pine logs, which yield glory to the walls and faces in the sitting room. These are the music and pictures of the most ancient religion. My house now stands in low land with limited outlook and on the skirt of the village, but I go with my friend to the shore of our little river, and with one stroke of the paddle I leave the village politics and personalities yet and the world of villages and personalities behind, and pass into a delicate realm of sunset and moonlight. To write almost for spotted man, to enter without novitiate and probation. We penetrate bodily this incredible beauty. We dip our hands in this painted element. Our eyes are bathed in these lights and forms. A holiday, a villager Torah, a royal revel, the proudest, most heart rejoicing festival that valor and beauty, power and taste, have bedecked and enjoyed, establish itself on the instant. These sunset clouds, these delicately emerging stars, with their private and ineffable glances, signify it and puffer it. I am taught the poorness of our invention, the ugliness of towns and palaces. Art and luxury have only learnt that they must work as enchantment and sequel to this original beauty. I am over instructed for my return. Henceforth, I shall be hard to please. I cannot go back to toys. I am grown expensive and sophisticated. I can no longer live without elegance, but a countryman shall be my master of revels. He who knows the most, he who knows what sweets and virtues are in the ground, the waters, the plants, the heavens, and how to come at these enchantments, is the rich and royal man. Only as far as these masters of the world have called on nature to their aid can they reach the height of magnificence. This is the meaning of their hanging gardens, villas, garden houses, islands, parks, and preserves to back their faulty personality within these strong accessories. I do not wonder that the landed interests should be invincible in a state with these dangerous auxiliaries, these bribe and invite, not kings, not palaces, not men, not women, but these tender and poetic stars, eloquent of secret promises. We heard what the rich man said. We knew of his villa, his groove, his wine, and his company. But the provocation and point of invitation came out of these beguiling stars. In their soft glance, I see what men strove to realize in some Versailles, or Paphos, or Ctesiphon. Indeed, it is the magical light of the horizon and the blue sky for the background which save all our works of art which were otherwise baubles. When the rich tax the poor with servility and ubiquitousness, ubiquitousness, they should consider the effects of men reputed to be the possessors of nature, unimaginative minds. Ah, if the rich were rich, as the poor fancy riches, a boy hears a military band play on the field at night, and he has kings and queens and famous chivalry palpably before him. He hears the echoes of a horn and a hill country. In the Notch Mountains, for example, which converts the mountains into an aileron hop, and this supernatural Tyralia restores to him the Dorian mythology, Apollo, Diana, and all divine hunters and hunteresses. Can a musical note be so lofty, so horribly beautiful? To the poor younger poet, thus fabulous is his picture of society. He is loyal, he respects the rich, they are rich for the sake of his imagination. How poor his fancy would be if they were not rich. That they have some high fenced groove, which they call park, that they live in larger and better garnished saloons than he has visited, and go in coaches, keeping only the society of the elegant, to the watering places and to distant cities. These make the groundwork from which he has delineated estates of romance, compared with which their actual possessions are shanties and paddocks. The muse itself betrays her son, enhances the gifts of wealth and well-born beauty by a radiation of the air and clouds, and forests that skirt the road, a certain hoary favor, as if from patrician genii to the patricians, a kind of aristocracy in nature, prince of the power of the air. The moral assembly which makes Edens and Tempes so easily may not be always found, but the material landscape is never far off. We can find these enchantments without visiting the Como Lake or the Madeira Islands. We exaggerate the praises of local scenery In every landscape, the point of astonishment is the meeting of the sky and the earth. And that is seen from the first hillock, as well as from the top of Alleghanies. Stars at night stoop down over the brownest, homeliest common with all the spiritual magnificence which they shed on the campana, on the campagna, or the marble deserts of Egypt, uproll clouds and the colors of morning and evening will transfigure maples and alders. The difference between landscape and landscape is small, but there is great difference in the beholders. There's nothing so wonderful in any particular landscape as the necessity of being beautiful under which every landscape lies. Nature cannot be surprised and undressed. Beauty breaks in everywhere. But it is very easy to outrun the sympathy of readers on this topic, which schoolmen called natura naturata, or nature passive. One can hardly speak directly of it without excess. It is as easy to broach it mix companies what is called the subject, quote, the subject of religion, end quote. A susceptible person does not like to indulge his tastes in this kind without apology of some trivial necessity. He goes to see a woodlot and look at the crops, or to fetch a plant or a mineral from a remote locality, or he carries a fowling piece or a fishing rod. I suppose this shame must have a good reason. Dietetism in nature is barren and unworthy. Copperfields is no better than his brother of Broadway. Men are naturally hunters and inquisitive of wooden crafts. I suppose that such as gazetteer, as woodcutters, and Indians should furnish facts for would take place in the most sumptuous drawing room of all the wreaths, as quote Flora's chaplets, end quote, of the bookshops, yet ordinarily, whether we are too clumsy for so subtle a topic, or from whatever cause, as soon as men begin to write on nature, they fall into euphuism. Frivolity is a most unfit tribute to Pan, who ought to be represented in the mythology as the most continent of gods. I would not be frivolous before the admirable reserve and prudence of time, yet I cannot renounce the rights of returning often to this old topic. The multitude of false churches accredits the true religion. Literature, poetry, science are the homage of man to this unfathomed secret, concerning which no sane man can affect an indifference or incuriosity. Nature is loved by what is best in us. It is loved as a city of God, although rather because there is no citizen. The sunset is unlike anything that is underneath it. It wants men, and the beauty of nature must always seem unreal and mocking until the landscape has human figures that are as good as itself. If they were good men, there would never be his rapture in nature. If the king in the palace, nobody looks at the walls. It is when he is gone and the house is filled with grooms and gazers that we turn from the people to find relief in the majestic mirror that are suggested by the picture and the architecture. The critics who complain of a sickly separation of the beauty of nature from the thing to be done must consider that our hunting of the picturesque is inseparable from our protest against false society. Man is fallen, nature is erect, and serves as a differential thermometer detecting the presence of absence of the divine sentiment in man. By fault of our dullness and selfishness, we are looking up to nature. But when we are convalescent, nature will look up to us. We see the foaming brook with compunction. If our own life flowed with the right energy, we should shame the brook. The stream of zeal sparkles with real fire, and not with reflex rays of sun and moon. Nature may be as selfishly studied as trade. Astronomy to the selfish becomes astrology. Psychology, mesmerism, with intent to show where our spoons are gone. And anatomy and physiology become phrenology and palmistry. But taking timely warning and leaving many things unsaid on the topic, let us no longer omit our homage to the efficient nature. Natura naturans, the quick cause before which all forms flee as the driven snows. Itself secret, its works driven before it in flocks and multitudes. As the ancients represented nature by Proteus, a shepherd, and in undescribable variety, it publishes itself in creatures reaching from particles and spiculae through transformation on transformation to the highest symmetries, arriving at consummate results without a shock or a leap. A little heat, that is a little motion, is all that differences the bold, dazzling, white, and deadly cold poles of the earth from the prolific tropical climates. All changes pass without violence by reason of the two cardinal conditions of boundless space and boundless time. Geology has initiated us into the secularity of nature and taught us to disuse our Dame School measures and exchange our Mosaic and Ptolemaic schemes for her larger style. We know nothing rightly for want of perspective. Now we learn what patient period must round themselves before the rock is formed. Then before the rock is broken and the first lichen race has disintegrated, the thinnest external plate into soil and open the door of the remote flora, fauna, kiwis, and pomona to come in. How far off yet is the trilobite? How far the quadruplet? How inconceivably remote is man? All duly arrive, and then race after race of men, in a long way from the granite to the oyster, farther yet to Plato and the preaching of the immortality of the soul. Yet all must come as surely as the first atom has two sides. Motion or changes in identity or rest are the first and second secrets. Motion or rest, the whole code of her laws, may be written in thumbnail on the signet of a ring. The whirling bubble on the surface of a brook admits us to the secret of the mechanics of the sky. Every shell on the beach is a key to it. A little water made to rotate in a cup explains the formation of the simpler shells. The addition of matter from year to year arrives at last at the most complex forms, and yet so poor is nature with all her craft that from the beginning to the end of the universe She has but one stuff with its two ends to serve up all her dreams like variety. Compounded, how she will star sand, fire, water, tree, man. It is still one stuff and betrays the same properties. Nature is always consistent, though she feigns to contravene her own laws. She keeps her laws and seems to transcend them. She arms and equips an animal to find its place and living in the earth, and at the same time, she arms and equips another animal to destroy it. Space exists to divide creatures, but by clothing the sides of a bird with a few feathers, she gives him a petty omnipresence. The direction is forever onward, but the artist still goes back to the material and begins again with the first elements on the most advanced stage. Otherwise, all goes to ruin. If we look at her work, we seem to catch a glance of a system in transition. Plants are the young of the world, vessels of health and vigor, but they grope ever upward toward consciousness. The trees are imperfect men and seem to bemoan their imprisonment, rooted in the ground. The animal is the novice and probationer, and in more advanced order, the men, the young, having tasted the first drop from the cup of thought, are already dissipated. The maples and ferns are still uncorrupt. Yet no doubt when they come to consciousness, they too will curse and swear. Flowers so strictly belong to youth that we adult men soon come to feel that their beautiful generations concern not us. We have had our day, now let the children have theirs. The flowers jilt us, and we are old batches with our ridiculous tenderness. Things are so strictly related that according to the skill of the eye, from any one object, the parts and properties of any other may be predicted. If we had eyes to see it, a bit of stone from the city wall would certify us of the necessity that man must exist as readily as a city. The identity makes all one and reduces to nothing great intervals on our customary scale. We talked of deviations from natural life, as if artificial life were not also natural. The smoothest curled courtier in the boudoirs of a place has an animal nature rude and aboriginal as a white bear, omnipotent to its own ends, and is directly related there amid essences and billet dogs to Himalaya, mountain chains, and the axis of the globe. If we consider how much we are nature's, we need not be superstitious about towns, as if that terrific or benefic force did not find us there also, and fashion cities. Nature, who made the mason, made the house. We may easily hear too much of rural influences. The cool, disengaged ear of natural objects make them invisible to us, chaffed and irresistible creatures with red faces, and we think we shall be as grand as they if we camp out and eat roots. But let us be men instead of woodchucks, and the oak and the elm shall gladly serve us, though we sit in chairs of ivory on carpets of silk. This guiding identity runs through all the surprises and contrasts of the piece, and characterizes every law. Man carries the world in his head, the whole astronomy and chemistry suspended in thought, because the history of nature is charactered in his brain. Therefore is he the prophet and discoverer of her secrets. Every known fact in natural science was divined by the presentment, by the presentiment of somebody, before it was actually verified. A man does not tie his shoe without recognizing laws which bind the farthest regions of nature, moon, plant, gas, crystal, are concrete geometry and numbers. Common sense knows its own and recognizes the fact first sight in chemical experiments. The common sense of Franklin, Dalton, Davy, and Black is the same common sense which make the arrangements which now it discovers. If identity expresses organized rest, the counteraction runs also into organization. The astronomers said, "Give us matter and a little motion, and we will construct the universe. It is not enough that we should have matter, we must also have a single impulse, one shove to launch the mass and generate the harmony of the centrifugal and centripetal forces. One heave the ball from the hand, and we can show how all this mighty order grew." A very unreasonable postulate, said the metaphysicians, and a plain begging of the question, could you not prevail to know the genesis of projection as well as the continuation of it? Nature, meanwhile, has not waited for the discussion, but, right or wrong, bestowed the impulse, and the balls rolled. It was no great affair, a mere push, but the astronomers were right in making much of it, for there is no end to the consequences of an act. That famous aboriginal push propagates itself through the walls of the system, and through every atom of every ball, through the races of creatures, and through the history of performance of every individual. Exaggeration is the course of things. Nature sends no creature, no man into the world without adding a small excess of his proper quality. Given the planet, it is still necessary to add the impulse. So to every creature, nature added a little violence, a direction in its proper path, a shove to put it on its way. In every instance, a slight generosity, a drop too much. Without electricity, the air would rot. Without the violence, direction, which men and women have, without a spice of bigot and fanatic, no excitement, no efficiency. I'm just going to read that paragraph again. Or rather, those few sentences. It's one long sentence. Without electricity, the air would rot, and without the violence of direction which men and women have, without a spice of bigot and fanatic, no excitement, no efficiency. We aim above the mark. To hit the mark. Every act has some falsehood of exaggeration in it. And when now and then comes along some sad-shaped-eyed man who saw how paltry a game is played and refuses to play but blabs the secret, how then is the bird flown? Oh no, the worried nature sends a new troop of fairer forms, lordier youths, with a little more excess of direction to hold them fast to their several aim. Makes them a little wrong-headed in that direction in which they are rightest. And on goes the game again, with new whirl for a generation or two more. The child with his sweet pranks, the fool of his senses, commanded by every sight and sound, without any power to compare and rank his sensations, abandoned to a whistle or a painted chip, to a dragon or gingerbread dog, individualizing everything, generalizing nothing, delighted with every new thing, lies down at night, empowered by the fatigue which this day of continual pretty madness has incurred, But nature has answered her purpose with the curly, dimpled lunatic. She has tasked every faculty and has secured the symmetrical growth of the bodily frame by all these attitudes and exertions, an end of the first importance, which could not be trusted to any care less perfect than her own. This glitter, this opaline luster plays round the top of every toy to his eye to ensure his fidelity, and he is deceived to his good. We are made alive and kept alive by the same arts. Let the Stoics say what they please. We do not eat for the good of living, but because the meat is savory and the appetite is keen. The vegetable life does not content itself with casting from the flower of the tree a single seed, but it fills the air and earth with prodigality of seeds. That if thousands perish, thousands may plant themselves. That hundreds may come up, that tens may live to mature. That at least one may replace the parent. All things betray the same calculated profusion. The excess of fear with which the animal frames is hedged round, shrinking from cold, starting at sight or of a snake or at a sudden noise, protects us through a multitude of groundless alarms. From some unreal danger at last, the lover seeks in marriage his private felicity and perfection, with no prospective end, and nature hides in his happiness her own end, named progeny or the perpetuity of the race. But the craft with which the world is made runs also into the mind and character of man. No man is quite the same. No man is quite the same. Each has a vein of folly in his composition, a slight determination of blood to the head, to make sure of holding him hard to some one point which nature has taken to heart. Great causes are never tried on their merits, but the cause is reduced to particulars to suit the size of the partisans, and the contention is never hottest on minor matters. Not less remarkable is the overfaith of each man in the importance of what he has to do or say. The poet, the prophet, has higher value for what he utters than any hearer, and therefore it gets spoken. The strong self-complacent Luther declares with an emphasis not to be mistaken that God himself cannot do without wise men. Jacob Beheman and George Fox betray their egotism and the pertinacity of their controversial tracts, and James Naylor once suffered himself to be worshipped as the Christ. Each prophet comes presently to identify himself with his thought and to esteem his hat and shoes sacred. However, this may discredit such persons with the judicious and helps them with the people, as it gives heat, pungency, and publicity to their words. A similar experience is not infrequent in private life. Each young and ardent person writes a diary in which, when the hours of prayer and penitence arrive, he inscribes his soul. The pages thus written are to him burning and fragrant. He reads them on his knees by midnight, and by the morning star he wets them with tears. They are sacred, too good for the world, and hardly yet to be shown to the dearest friend. This is the man-child that is born to the soul, and her life still circulates in the babe. The umbilical cord has not yet been cut. After some time has elapsed, he begins to wish to admit his friend to this hallowed experience, and with hesitation yet with firmness exposes the pages to his eye. Will they not burn his eyes? The friend coldly turns them over and passes from the writing to conversation with easy transition, which strikes the other party with astonishment and vexation. He cannot suspect the writing itself. Days and nights of fervid life, of communion with angels of darkness and of light, have engraved their shadowy characters on their tear-stained book. He suspects the intelligence of the heart, or the heart of his friend. Is there then no friend? He cannot yet credit that one may have impressive experience and yet may not know how to put his private fact into literature, and perhaps the discovery that wisdom has other tongues and ministers than we, that though we should hold our peace to choose, would not the less be spoken, might check injuriously the flames of our zeal. A man could only speak so long as he does not feel his speech to be partial and inadequate. It is partial, but he does not see it to be so, whilst he utters it. As soon as he is released from the instinctive and particular, and sees its partiality, he shuts his mouth in disgust. For no man can write anything who does not think that what he writes is for the time the history of the world, or do anything well who does not esteem his work to be of importance. My work may be done, but I must not think it of none, or I shall not do it with impunity. In like manner, there is thought, nature, something mocking, something that leads us on and on, but arrives nowhere, keeps no faith with us, or promise outruns the performance. We live in a system of approximations. Every end is perspective of some other end, which is also temporary. A round and final success nowhere. We are encamped in nature, not domesticated. Hunger and thirst lead us on to eat and to drink. But bread and wine, mix and cook them how you will, leave us hungry and thirsty. After the stomach is full, it is the same with all our arts and performance. Our music, our poetry, our language itself are not satisfactions, but suggestions. Hunger for wealth, which reduces the planet to a garden, fools the eager pursuer. What is the end sought? Plainly to secure the ends of good sense and beauty from the intrusion of deformity, of vulgarity, of vulgarity of any kind. But what an apparose method! What a train of means to secure a little conversation, this palace of brick and stone, these servants, the kitchen, these stables, horse and equipage, this bank stock and file of mortgages, trade to a world, country house and cottage by the waterside, all for a little conversation, high, clear, and spiritual. Could it not be had as well by beggars on the highway? No. All these things came from successive efforts of these beggars to remove friction from the wheels of life and give opportunity. Conversation, character, with avowed ends. Wealth was good as it appeased. The animal cravings cured the smoky chimney, silenced the shrieking door, brought friends together in a warm and quiet room, and kept the children at the dinner table in a different apartment. Thought, virtue, beauty were the ends, but it was not known that men of thought and virtue sometimes had the headache or wet feet, or could lose good time whilst the room was getting warm in winter days. Unluckily, the exertions necessary to remove these inconveniences, the main attention has been diverted to this object. The old aims to have been lost sight of, and to remove friction. And to remove friction has come to be the end. That is the ridicule of rich men. And Boston, London, Vienna, and now the government generally of the world are cities and governments of the rich, and the masses are not men but poor men. That is, men who would be rich. This is the ridicule of the class. That they arrive with pains, sweet and free nowhere. And all is done, it is for nothing. They are like one who has interrupted the conversation of a company to make his speech, and now has forgotten what he went to say. The appearance strikes the eye everywhere of an aimless society, of aimless nations, were the ends of nature so great and cogent as exact this immense sacrifice of men? Quite analogous to the deceits in life, there is, as might be expected, a similar effect on the eye from the face of the external nature. There is in woods and waters a certain enticement and flattery, together with a failure to yield a present satisfaction. This disappointment is felt in every landscape. I have seen the softness and beauty of the summer clouds floating feathery overhead, enjoying as it seemed their heightened privilege of motion, whilst yet they appeared not much the drapery of this place and hour. As for looking to some pavilions and gardens of festivity beyond, it is an all jealousy, but the poet finds himself not near enough to his object. The pine tree, the river, the bank of flowers before him does not seem to be nature. Nature is still elsewhere. This or this is but outskirt and a far-off reflection and echo of the triumph that has passed by and is now at its glancing splendor and heyday. Perchance in the neighboring fields, or if you stand in the field, then in the adjacent woods. The present object shall give you the sense of stillness that follows a pageant which has just gone by. What splendid distance, what recesses of ineffable pomp and loveliness in the sunset. But who can go where they are, or lay his hand or plant his foot thereon? Off they fall from the round world for ever and ever. It is the same among the men and women as among the silent trees, always a referred existence, an absence, never a presence and satisfaction. It is that beauty can never be grasped. Is it that beauty can never be grasped? And persons in a landscape is equally inaccessible? The accepted and betrothed lover has lost the wildest charm of his maiden in her acceptance of him. She was heaven, whilst he pursued her as a star. She cannot be heaven if she stoops to such a one as he. What shall we say of this omnipresent appearance, the first projectile impulse of this flattery and bulking of so many well-meaning creatures? Must we not suppose somewhere in the universe a slight treachery and derision? Are we not engaged to a serious resentment of this use that is made of us? Are we tickled trouts and fools of nature? One look at the face of heaven, and earth lays all petulance at rest, and soothes us to the wise convictions. To the intelligent, nature converts itself into a vast promise, and will not be rashly explained. A secret is unfolded. Many, and Oedipus arrives. He has the whole mystery teeming in his brain. Alas, the same sorcery has spoiled his skill. No syllable can be shaped on his lips. Her mighty orbit vaults like the fresh rainbow into the deep. But no archangel wing was yet strong enough to follow it and report of the return of the curve. But it also appears that our actions are seconded and disposed to greater conclusions than we designed. We are escorted on every hand through life by spiritual agents, and a beneficent purpose lies in wait for us We cannot bandy words with nature or deal with her as we deal with persons. If we measure our individual forces against hers, we may easily feel as if we were the sport of an insuperable destiny. But if instead of identifying ourselves with the work, we feel that the soul of the workman streams through us, we shall find the peace of the morning dwelling first in our hearts, and the fathomless powers of gravity and chemistry, and over them of life, pre-existing within us in their highest form. The uneasiness which the thought of our helplessness in a chain of causes occasions us results from looking too much at one condition of nature, namely motion. But the drag is never taken from the wheel. Wherever the impulse succeeds, the rest or identity insinuates its compensation. I'll repeat that again. Wherever the impulse succeeds, the rest or identity insinuates its compensation. All over the wide fields of earth grows the pranula, or self-heal. After every foolish day, we sleep off the fumes and furies of its hours. And though we are always engaged with particulars, and often enslaved to them, we bring with us to every experiment the innate universal laws. These, whilst they exist in the mind as ideas, stand around us in nature forever embodied. A present sanity to expose and cure the insanity of men. Our servitude to particulars betrays us into 100 foolish expectations. We anticipate a new era from the invention of a locomotive or a balloon. The new engine brings with it the old checks. They say that by electromagnetism, your salad shall be grown from the seed whilst your fowl is roasting for dinner. It is a symbol of our modern aims and endeavors, of our condensations and acceleration of objects. But nothing is gained. Nature cannot be cheated. Man's life is but 70 salads. Long, grow, they swift to grow, they slow. In these checks and impossibilities, however, we find our advantages, not less than in the impulses. Let the victory fall where it will, we are on that side. And the knowledge that we traverse the whole scale of being, from the center to the poles in nature, and have some stake in every possibility, lends that sublime luster to death, which philosophy and religion have too outwardly and literally striven to express in the popular doctrine of the immortality of the soul. The reality is more excellent than the report. Here is no ruin, no discontinuity, no spent allow. The divine circulations never rest nor linger. Nature is the incarnation of a thought and turns to a thought again as ice becomes water and gas. The world is mind and precipitated, and the volatile essence is forever escaping again into a state of free thought. Hence the virtue and pungency of the influence of the mind of natural objects, whether inorganic or organized. Man imprisoned, man crystallized, man vegetative, speaks to man impersonated. That power which does not respect quantity, which makes the whole and the particle its equal channel, delegates its smile to the morning, and distills its essence into every drop of rain. Every moment instructs in every object, for wisdom is infused into every form. It has been poured into us as blood. It convulsed us as pain. It slid into us as pleasure. It enveloped us in dole. Lunchly days were days of cheerful labor. We did not guess its essence until after a long time. That was on page 421. That was the second book on nature. We shall now proceed on to the next book. Politics. Ooh. I think that was 421 with a page in mid. See, 421. And now we're on the next book called Politics on page 422. 422 in the book and 414 on the PDF. Cold and iron are good. It's a little tricky when it comes to reading poems. Sometimes it's vertical and sometimes it's horizontal, so it can get a little tricky, but we'll see how this goes. I'm going to try vertical at first. Gold and iron are good. To buy iron and gold. No, I don't think that's working. Gold and iron are good. Phoebus establish must. To buy iron and gold when the muse is 9. All earth's fleece and food with the virtues meet, for the like are solid, fine to their design. Boded Merlin wise, an Atlantic seat, proved Napoleon great, by green orchard boughs, no kind, no coinage buys, fended from the heat. No, I'm not reading that right. I'll try the other way. We'll do it this way, then we'll try the other way. All above its rate with a statesman plows, fearcraft and avarice furrow for the wheat, cannot rear a state when the church is social worth, or dust to build when the state house is the hearth. What is more than dust? And the perfect state is come. Walls amphibian piled the Republican at home. I think that I'm reading that incorrectly. Yeah, I just realized it's supposed to be vertical. Let's try vertical. Gold and iron are good. To buy iron and gold. All earth's fleece and food for the like are sold. Boded Merlin wise, proved Napoleon great. No kind nor coinage buys aught above its rate. Fear, craft, and avarice cannot rear a state. Out of dust to build what is more than dust. Walls and fillion pilled. Fabius establish must, when the muses 9, with the virtuous meet, find to their design. An Atlantic seat, by green orchard boughs, fended from the heat, with a statesman ploughs, furrow for the wheat. When the church's social worth, when the state house is the hearth, then the perfect state is come, the Republicans at home. At home, I tried to make it rhyme, so I said come and hum. Okay? In dealing with the state, we ought to remember that its institutions are not aboriginal, though they existed before we were born, that they are not surprising to the citizen, that every one of them was once the act of a single man. Every law and usage was a man's expedient to meet a particular case. That they all are imitable, all alterable. We may make as good. We may make better. Society is an illusion to the young citizen. It lies before him in rigid repose with certain names, men, and institutions rooted like oak trees to the center, round which all arrange themselves the best they can. But the old statesman knows that society is fluid. There are no such roots and centers, but any particle may suddenly become the center of the movement and compel the system to gyrate round it. As every man of strong will, like Pisistratus, Pisistratus or Cromwell, does for a time, and every man of truth, like Plato or Paul, does forever. But politics rest on necessary foundations and cannot be treated with levity. Republics abound in young civilians who believe that the laws make the city, that grave modifications of the policy and modes of living and employments of the population, that commerce, education, and religion may be voted in or out, and that any measure, though it were absurd, may be imposed on a people if only you can get sufficient voices to make it law. But the wise know that foolish legislation is a rope of sand which perishes in the twisting. The state must follow and not lead the character and progress of the citizen. The strongest usurper is quickly got rid of, and they only who build on ideas build for eternity, and that the form of government which prevails in the expression of what cultivation exists in the population which permits it. The law is only a memorandum. We are superstitious and esteem the statue somewhat. Statue stands there to say, "Yesterday we agreed so and so, but how feel ye this article today?" Our statue is a currency, which we stamp with our own portrait. It soon becomes unrecognizable, and in progress of time will return to the mint. Nature is not democratic, no limited, monarchical, but despotic, and will not be fooled or abated of any jot of her authority by the pertest of her sons. And as fast the public's mind is opened to more intelligence, the code is seen to be brute and stammering. It speaks not articulately and must be made to. Meantime, the education of the general mind never stops. The reveries of the true and simple are prophetic. What the tender poetic youth dreams and prays and paints today, but shuns the ridicule of saying aloud, shall presently be the resolutions of public bodies. Then shall be carried as grievance and bill of rights through conflict and war, and then shall be triumphant law and establishment for 100 years, until it gives place in return to new prayers and pictures. The history of the state sketches in coarse outline the progress of thought, and follows at a distance the delicacy of culture and of aspiration. The theory of politics which has possessed the mind of men, and which they have expressed the best they could in their laws and in their revolutions, considers persons and property as two objects for whose protection government exists. Our persons all have equal rights, in virtue of being identical in nature. This interest, of course, with its whole power, demands a democracy. While the rights of all persons are equal, in virtue of their access to reason, their rights in property are very unequal. One man owns his clothes, and another owns a county. This accident, depending primarily on the skill and virtue of the parties, of which there is every degree, and secondarily in patrimony, falls equally, and its rights, of course, are unequal. Personal rights, universally the same, demand a government framed on the ratio of the census. Property demands a government framed on the ratio of owners and of owning. Laban, who has flocked, Laban or Lavan, who has flocks and herds, wishes them looked after by an officer of the frontiers, lest the Midianites shall drive them off and pays a tax so that to that end. Jacob has no flocks or herds, and no fear of the Midianites, and pays no tax to the officer. It seems fit that Laban and Jacob should have equal rights to elect the officer who is to defend their persons, but that Laban or Lavan and not Jacob should elect the officer who is to guard the sheep and cattle, and if question arise whether additional officers' watchtowers should be provided, must not Lavan and Yitzchak, or Laban and Isaac, and those who must sell part of their herds to buy protection for the rest, judge better of this, and with more right, than Jacob, who becomes, sorry, than Jacob, who, because he is a youth and a traveler, eats their bread, and not his own? In the early society, proprietors made their own wealth, and so long as it comes to the owners in the direct way, no other opinion would arise in any equitable community than that property should make the law for property, and persons the law for persons. But property passes through donation or inheritance to those who do not create it. Gift, in one case, makes it as really the new owners, as labor made it the first owners. In the other case of patrimony, the law makes an ownership which will be valid in each man's view according to the estimate which he sets on the public tranquility. It was not, however, found easy to embody the readily admitted principle that property should make law for property, and persons for persons, since persons and property mix themselves in every transaction. At last, it seemed settled that the rightful distinction was that the property should have more elective franchise than non-proprietors, on the Spartan principle of calling that which is of quote calling that which is just equal, not that which is equal just. Calling that which is just equal, and not that which is equal just. End quote. That principle no longer looks so self-evident as it appeared in former times, partly because doubts have arisen whether too much weight had been allowed in the laws to property, and such a structure given to our usages as allowed the rich to encroach on the poor and to keep them poor, but mainly because there is an instinctive sense, however obscure and yet inarticulate, that the whole constitution of property on its present tenures is injurious, and its influence on persons deteriorating and degrading. That truly the only interest for the consideration of the state is persons. The property will always follow persons. At the highest end of government is the culture of men, and that if men can be educated, the institutions will share their improvement, and the moral sentiment will write the law of the land. If it be not easy to settle the equity of this question, the peril is less when we take note of our natural defenses. We are kept by better gods than the vigilance of such magistrates as we commonly elect. Society always consists in greater part of young and foolish persons. The all will have seen through the hypocrisy of courts and statesmen, die and leave no wisdom to their sons. They believe their own newspaper, as their fathers did at their age. With such an ignorant and deceivable majority, states would soon run to ruin, but that there are limitations beyond which the folly and ambition of governors cannot go. Things have their laws as well as men, and things refuse to be trifled with. Property will be protected. Corn will not grow unless it is planted and manured, but the farmer will not plant or hoe it unless the chances are 100 to 1 that he will cut and harvest it. Under any forms, persons and property must and will have their just sway. They exert their power as steadily as matter its attraction. Cover up a pound of each never so cunningly. Divide it and subdivide it. Melt it to liquid. Convert it to gas. It will always weigh a pound. It will always attract and resist other matter by the full virtue of 1 pound weight. And the attributes of a person, his wit, and his moral integrity, will exercise under any law or extinguishing tyranny. The proper force is not overtly and covertly. Sorry. I'm going to read that again. It will always attract and resist other matter by the full virtue of 1 pound weight. And the attributes of a person, his wit and his moral energy, will exercise under any law or extinguishing tyranny the proper force. If not overtly, then covertly. If not for the law, then against it. If not wholesomely, then poisonously. With right or by might. The boundaries of person's influence, of personal influence, it is impossible to fix. As persons are organs of moral and supernatural force, under the dominion of an idea which possesses the minds of multitudes as civil freedom, or the religious sentiment, the powers of persons are no longer subjects of calculation. A nation of men unanimously bent on freedom or conquest can easily confound the arithmetic of statistics and achieve extravagant actions and of all proportions to their means, as the Greeks, the Sakians, the Swiss, the Americans, and the French have done. In like manner, to every principle of property belongs its own attraction. A cent is a representative of a certain quantity of corn or other commodity. Its values is in necessities of the animal matter. It is so much warmth, so much bread, so much water, so much land. The law may do what it will with the owner of property. It's just power. Or watch. It's just power will still attach to the cent. The law may, in a mad freak, say that all shall have power except by owners of property. They shall have no vote. Nevertheless, by a higher law, the property will, year after year, write every statute that respects property. The non-proprietor will be the scribe of the proprietor. What the owners wish to do, the whole power of property will do, either through the law or else in defiance of it. Of course, I speak of all the property, not merely of the great estates, which, when the rich are outvoted, as frequently happens, it is the joint treasury of the poor which exceeds their accumulation. Every man owns something, if it is only a cow or a wheelbarrow, or his arms, and so has the property to dispose of. The same necessity which secures the rights of person and property against the malignity or folly Or the magistrate of the magistrate determines the form of methods of governing, which are proper to each nation, and to its habit of thought, and no wise transferable to other states of society. In this country, we are vain of our political institutions, which are singular in this, that they sprung within the memory of living men, from the character and condition of the people, which they still express with sufficient fidelity, and ostentatiously prefer them to any other in history. They are not better, but only fitter for us. We may be wise in asserting the advantage of modern times of the democratic form, but to other states of society in which religion consecrated the monarchical, that and not this was expedient. Democracy is better for us because the religious sentiment of the present time accords better with it. Born democrats, we are no wise qualified to judge monarchy, which to our fathers, living in the monarchical idea, was also relatively right. But our institutions, though in coincidence with the spirit of the age, have not an exemption from the practical defects which have discredited other forms. Every actual state is corrupt. Good men must obey the laws too well. What satire on government can equal the severity of censure conveyed in the word politic, which now for ages has signified cunning, intimating that the state is a trick. I'll read that again so I get it right. What satire on government can equal the severity of censure conveyed in the word politic, which now for ages has signified cunning, intimating that the state is a trick. The same benign necessity and the same practical abuse appear in the parties into which each state divides itself, or opponents and defenders of administration of the government. Parties are also founded on instincts and have better guides to their own humble aims than the sagacity of their leaders. They have nothing perverse in their origin, but really mark some real and lasting relation. We might as wisely reprove the east wind or the frost as a political party whose members, for the most part, could give no account of their position, but stand for the defense of those interests in which they find themselves. Our quarrel with them begins when they quit this deep natural ground at the bidding of some leader, and obeying personal considerations, throw themselves into the maintenance and defense of points nowise belonging to their system. A party is perpetually corrupted by personality. While we absolve the association from dishonesty, we cannot extend the same charity to their leaders. They reap the rewards of their docility and zeal of the masses, which they direct. Ordinarily, our parties are parties of circumstance and not of principle, as the planting interest in conflict with the commercial, the party of capitalists, and that of operatives, parties which are identical in their moral character and which can easily change ground with each other in the support of many of their measures. Parties of principle, as religious sects, or the party of the free trade, or universal suffrage, the abolition of slavery, of abortion of capital, punishment degenerate into personalities, a world would inspire enthusiasm. The vice of our leading parties in this country, which may be cited as a fierce specimen of those societies of opinion, is that they do not plant themselves on the deep and necessary grounds to which they are respectively entitled, but lash themselves to fury in the carrying of some local and momentary measure, nowise useful to be Commonwealth, nowise useful to the Commonwealth. Of the two great parties which at this hour almost share the nation between them, I should I should say that one has the best cause, and the other contains the best men. The philosopher, the poet, of the religious man, will of course wish to cast his vote with the Democrat for free trade, for wide suffrage, for the abolition of legal cruelties in the penal code, and for facilitating in every manner the access of the young and the poor to the sources of wealth and power. But he can really accept the persons whom his so-called popular party proposes to him as representatives of the liberties, the liberties. They have not at heart the ends which give to the name of democracy. What hope and virtue are in it? The spirit of our American radicalism is destructive and aimless. It is not loving. It has no ulterior and divine ends, but it is destructive, only out of hand and selfishness. On the other hand, the Conservative Party, composed of the most moderate, able, and cultivated part of the population, is timid and merely defensive of property. It vindicates no right, it aspires no real good, it brands no crime, it proposes no generous policy. It does not build, nor write, nor cherish the arts, nor foster religion, nor establish schools, nor encourage science, nor emancipate the slave, nor befriend the poor, or the Italian, or the immigrant, from neither party when in power. From neither party when in power has the world any benefit to expect in science, art, or humanity at all commensurate with the resources of the nation. I do not for these defects despair of our republic. We are not at the mercy of any waves of chance. In the strife of ferocious parties, human nature always finds itself cherished, as the children of the convicts at Botany Bay we found to have as healthy a moral sentiment as other children. Citizens of feudal states are alarmed at our democratic institutions lapsing into anarchy, and the older and more cautious among ourselves are learning from Europeans to look with some terror at our turbulent freedom. It is said that in our license of constructing the Constitution and in the despotism of public opinion we have no anchor, and one foreign observer thinks he has found the safeguard in the sanctity of marriage among us, and another thinks he has found it in our Calvinism. Fisher Ames expressed the popular security more wisely when he compared a monarchy and a republic, saying that a monarchy is a merchantman which sails well, but will sometimes strike on a rock and go to the bottom, while a republic is a raft which would never sink, but then your feet are always in water. No forms can have any dangerous importance whilst we are befriended by the laws of things. It makes no difference how many tons weight of atmosphere presses on our heads, so long as the same pressure resists it within the lungs. Augment the mass a thousandfold, it cannot begin to crush us. As long as reaction is equal to action, the fact of two poles, of two forces, centripetal and centrifugal, is universe, and each force, by its own activity, develops the other, while liberty develops iron conscience. Want of liberty by strengthening law and decorum. So that's why liberty develops iron conscience. Want of liberty by strengthening law and decorum. stupefies conscience. Lynch law prevails only where there is a greater hardihood and so substancy in the leaders. A mob cannot be a permanency. Everybody's interest requires that it should not exist, and only justice satisfies all. I'm going to finish this video, and I'm going to carry on reading in another video. We're on page 429. We're going to finish here. This is a book on politics. I'm not into politics, but I don't think Waldo Emerson is either. He's just giving his own blanket opinion about the situation. Please share with me your feedback, your thoughts, your comments, your insights. I look forward to hearing about it. Please share in the comment section down below. What do you think of this video? Does it resonate with you? Do the ideas resonate with you? What do you think about my reading style? Does it resonate with you? What do you think of the way I filmed this video? I want to hear more about it. I look forward to hearing from you. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And please press the like or dislike button. Please let me know what you thought of this video. I look forward to hearing from you. Keep on shining your beautiful light. You are loved. You're beautiful. You're capable. Have a great day. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to spend time with me reading this amazing book. Take care.